Welcome to the Justice for You podcast, brought to you by Waggener High BSU, where students of color acknowledge and discuss African American struggles with African American fighters. In this episode, I speak with Mr. Greg Vann about our school district and our African American students.
My name is Greg Vann, and I am an associate of Diversity, Equity, and Poverty Programs for JCPS's Diversity, Equity, and Poverty Programs Department.
All right. Can you explain to me what I do? I'm not really too...
Sure. So the biggest portion of my job is overseeing the Black Student Unions in JCPS. So just a little bit of history on that. In 2018, the Board of Education unanimously passed a racial equity policy, basically saying that JCPS is seeking racial equity for all students and staff in JCPS. Something that is under that is called programmatic access, so providing programming for all students. So before 2018, there were Black student unions in JCPS, but the cool thing about the racial equity policy and having a policy to back it up is that now we have a funded position for BSUs, meaning that every middle school and every high school has the ability to hire somebody and to pay a stipend to a staff member to oversee the Black Student Union. I work under the chief equity officer, and one thing he always says is, if you show me your budget, I'll show you your priorities, meaning that people pay for the stuff they really care about. So people saying that they care about racial equity is one thing, but then when you can actually are willing to pay someone to oversee the BSU, then that shows that you actually value the BSU. So that's the biggest thing. Right now we have over 50 BSUs in JCPS, so trying to oversee all of those, and the sponsors are the one, and the students are the ones that do the most work, but making sure that I'm trying to provide support for all of them, that's a big job. Other than that, I'm also over, I do Black Male Achievement, so providing programming for Black males in JCPS, and then also with the BSUs, trying to make sure that we have a lot to offer them too.
First off, I want to say thank you on behalf of BSU because I myself am a member, and you funding actually means a lot to us. So first off, thank you on behalf of BSU.
You're welcome, but I don't want to take credit for that. The credit for that goes to our chief equity officer that fought for it, and all the other people in the JCPS and the community that fought for it, but also the Board of Education for approving it, that we could do the racial equity policy. So you're welcome on behalf of all of them.
Another thing I would like to say is I've never thought of it like that. Like, I'm one of those people who like to think deep into things, and I've never thought of the saying that you said that your boss says, where you're like, show me your paycheck, I'll show you that. I've never thought of it like that. It's actually really, really clever.
Yeah, and it's something it's something you can use in your everyday life. I'm sure you probably don't have credit cards and all that kind of stuff yet, maybe not even a bank account. But if you do, a lot of time your credit card or your bank statement, you can show, like I know on my credit card app, it shows how much money I spend on entertainment, how much I spend on food, how much I spend on bills and all that kind of stuff. And like for me, my right now I need to get what I'm spending on food, cut that down a little bit so I can save a little bit more money. But I do value food, and like, I'm over here at Waggener High School, and I know this is really close to Penny and Pearl's Bakery, who has the best cookies in Louisville, and I really want to go over there when I leave here. But thanks to this conversation and what we're talking about, I'm not going to do that because I need to make sure I'm keeping up my priorities. So, yeah, it's definitely something you can use in your everyday life.
I'm a man of sweets myself. Can you, what is your favorite part about the job? I'm just curious.
Favorite part? Man, honestly, I do a lot of paperwork and, like, planning for stuff. For students, but my favorite part is when I can do stuff like this or go to a BSU meeting and see BSU students, or even like, I know like y'all just went to University of Louisville as a BSU and stuff like that, like getting a picture to my phone, like showing what BSU students are doing and me being able to interact with BSU students, even though I don't get to do that every day. When I do get to do it, that's the most fun part, because you see, anything that you work for and that you're working on is worth it because of the students. But then also, if you look at just the news, and not to blame the news, but just even society in general, if you get on social media, all of it, a lot of time it focuses on the negative things about Black people and Black students and even public education in general. But when you actually can go interact with students and you see how brilliant they are and the things that they're interested in doing, it just shows that you really have to, I don't want to say ignore the stuff that you see, but you have to put it into context. A lot of time when if you go to on Yelp, which is an app that I use when I'm about to go to a restaurant to see reviews. A lot of time the reviews are either they're extreme. They talk about how bad something was. Like if they go to a restaurant and they have a bad experience, they normally go to the app and put the bad stuff on the app. Like, I can't believe they did this, and this. But if you go to a restaurant and you have a great experience, a lot of time people just ignore the good stuff that's going on. They focus on the negative. So when you get to go interact with students and see how brilliant they are, or you all are, and just to interact with them, that's really my favorite part of it.
I think that a lot of times people, especially when they read the bad, they don't ever consider that the cause and effect that led to the bad. You know, it's like there's always a chain of reactions that happen. So before there was a bad, something must have happened to get there. So I don't think a lot of people consider that, especially when it comes to the Black Union as well, just any of us in general. Because a lot of times they're like, well, you know, they associate us with guns and stuff, but they never consider that what that person's life was like, or like the poverty rate, or anything like that. So
yeah, and also like not putting stuff into context. So if you look at the news tonight and you see that there's a huge fight at this school, and I say huge fight, let's say it was a group of 6 boys fighting each other. A lot of time people look at that and they say, man, JCPS is so bad. That's all they say. They see one school, one fight, and they say JCPS is so bad. So like you said, they don't look at what caused the fight, what led to the fight. People don't care about that. They just care that they saw a fight. And then also looking at it in context, like this is one school with 6 students. When you're talking about a large district with over 100 schools, over 100,000 students, and then you want to label the whole school district as bad because you saw one bad thing. You know what I'm saying? And then like I'm over here today and I'm seeing what y'all are doing with the Westport Middle School students. People don't care about the 100 good things that happened that day. They only will say JCPS is bad because of this one isolated event. So yeah.
In your opinion, do you feel like when you're helping the Black Student Union that at any way it's like improving our society? Like, do you feel like it's actually making like progress?
For sure. One thing is the JCPS measures is called sense of belonging, meaning how students feel about their school. Historically, Black girls have had the lowest sense of belonging, meaning that they felt the least positive about their school experience. But with BSUs, I get to go to a lot of BSU meetings, and one thing I always hear, especially that first year when they first got implemented, it was during COVID, and I sat in on a lot of BSU meetings virtually. It was a lot easier to visit all of them because they were all virtual. And I always hear the same thing. It seemed like from any white student that participated in it, they would say, man, I love this because I had no idea my Black peers felt like this, and now that I know, I can help them do something about it. And then from Black students, a lot of time what I would hear and still hear is I always felt a way about school or about society. I've always had feelings on the inside, and when I have a BSU, it shows me that basically I'm not crazy because there's other people that feel the same exact way as I do. So yeah, I do think it because one, it's just like, to me, it's therapeutic. It's like going to therapy. When you can talk to somebody else about what you're going through, it's like a weight is lifted off your shoulders, but then also not just talking about it, but actually doing things to correct it and to fix it. So I think that yes, it improves the lives of students in school, and I know that it improves their lives at home because one, you can make relationships with people that last outside of school. 2, you can help make changes in your community that helps make your community better. And I think overall it definitely improves the lives of students.
I really love that opinion, actually. It's actually pretty positive.
And let me ask you, since you're a BSU student, do you feel like BSUs, because it really doesn't matter as much what I think, how do you feel like BSUs improve the lives of students, Black students?
I actually would have to say yes to that because, like, a lot of the students in BSU, like, outside of class, we're, like, you know, we're not distant per se because we still have, like, our friend groups, still have the people we hang with, but we're, like, you know, it's a little different than hanging, especially someone that's, like, a little, doesn't really understand what you've been through as much is how I'm going to say that. It's, like, it's different from being, and then when you're in BSU, it's just like, okay, we have a lot of opportunities we didn't know about, a lot of things we can get out there and do. There are support groups like you that are out there to help us. There's a lot of more support than what we're led on to believe at first originally. Yeah. So I feel like it's eye-opening, to say the least, for anybody who's in BSU. And I don't think I recall too many white students that are in there, but I'm pretty sure they're pretty having fun time too. Yeah,
and it just varies from school to school with the population and what the makeup of the BSU is. But I definitely can see the benefit of white students even if you're not a member, at least being open to the program. And like last year, I know I came over here to y'all's Black History Month program, and BSU was really highly involved with putting that on. So even though if you don't have white students in your BSU, they're getting to experience things that they wouldn't experience because there is a BSU in their school. So.
And I would also like to say that I think it's actually interesting, going back to a thing that you had said earlier about your job. I think it's very interesting that you have like a in-group therapy with your staff about the black staffs about racial trauma. Yeah. I think that's very interesting because one of our previous podcasts, we were thinking like, you know, in the sitting room, just listen down bullet points, just like what can we do to improve black lives around the world? Like, you know, just outside of BSU, inside of worldly experiences, what can we do just naturally to help? And I think that's actually pretty good. Can you elaborate on that more?
So one thing I would say that I think y'all can do is, I think the biggest thing, especially with black people, is letting them know it's okay to seek therapy. Now, therapy is not cheap, but one thing about Louisville, Spalding University has a grant where they can provide free mental health therapists for the community. There may be some stipulations on, like you may have to live in a certain zip code or something like that, but long story short, Spalding has the ability to offer free therapy. But I think the biggest thing that you all can do is letting people know that it's okay to seek therapy. One, you see people that attend church will think that you can't seek therapy because it goes against God, which is not true. Well, in my opinion, it's not true. It's okay to talk to God and to talk to people, you know, about your issues or concerns. But then also that it's just like this thing that people think you're crazy if you go to therapy, which is not true. I haven't always been a person that's been open to it, but somebody that I follow that I would encourage you or any other young man is a guy named Jason Wilson. You can follow him on Instagram at Mr. Jason Wilson, but he wrote a book called Cry Like a Man, and then he wrote a book called Battle Cry. It's like Battle Cry, Waging the War Within or something like that. Basically what his whole thing is, one, it's okay for men to cry and it makes us better when we do release emotions, but then also with that Battle Cry and Waging War with the battle within, like us as men, a lot of times we'll have stuff that may be in your mind like, man, he stepped on your shoe. You need to check him on that. Or you'll have like, don't get punked. You know, something will happen and you feel like you need to stand up for yourself and you need to address issues to like show somebody how big and tough we are. And what he sells is like being a comprehensive man. That he says like God didn't make men to be masculine and women to be feminine. He made humans to have all these emotions. And there's times where we have to be masculine, but then there's also times where we need to not be masculine. We need to be nurturing and we need to be all these other things. So kind of going against that, the stereotypical thoughts of like what a man is and what a woman is, and that men are tough and they just need to go to work. And one thing he always talks about is when you see an older couple, a lot of time the woman is healthy and she's walking around and she just looks like she's a healthy person, but you see a lot of older men on canes and they're limping around, and because in their older age, they suffer from all the stuff we do in our early years, like thinking we're too tough to call into work when we need to rest, and we're too tough to have a nap, and feeling like we can never rest, and then putting all of our energy into showing how much of a man we are, that we run our bodies down, and that's why the life expectancy for men is shorter than women, and all this stuff. Because of all this stuff that we battle with within, but we're not, I guess, brave enough to go against and say, no, I'm tired, I'm going to lay down and take a rest and stuff like that. So
I actually think so as well when it comes to like the stereotypes of being like a masculine male, or even just like in the black community where it's like you're growing up, you're like, you're a young boy. As soon as you get like hurt or something, then your parents are like, you know what, you're supposed to be a young man. I didn't raise a girl. Stop crying.
Right.
And you're supposed to grow up like that. So with that in mind, and honestly, I've talked to females and males of my friends that are black, and it's kind of different from both sides slightly. Because with the females, they're always like, I'm not good looking enough, I'm not pretty enough. And then with the guys, they're just like, well, no, I gotta show this guy who's the boss, because otherwise nobody's gonna give me street cred or whatever.
Right,
you know?
right.
So with that being said, I actually think that a good sense of self is actually kind of needed in our respective communities.
I agree, and I know a lot of time. It seems like a lot of the experience of being black is like being quiet and not talking, whether it be not talking to a therapist or we don't snitch. Like if something goes on around us or in our neighborhood, we don't snitch. We don't talk to the police. When you cry, it's like shut up and man up. You know what I'm saying? You're not allowed to cry. Like me personally, growing up, my household suffered from domestic abuse. I had a father who was a drug addict, and he domestically abused my mother. And he, like, basically, we weren't allowed to, of course, talk about it. We couldn't go to school and say, hey, well, we should have, but we didn't. But not being able to go to school and say, I need to talk to somebody because I was told, like, what happens at home stays at home, and you got to keep all this stuff bottled up. And it did affect me and still affects me even all these years later, which that's why I'm happy I was turned on to something, to Jason Wilson, and also having a cousin that's a therapist and being able to talk to him about stuff like that. But, I think a lot of our experiences based around us being quiet and just dealing with life. You know what I'm saying? And I think there is some historical ramifications from slavery. You know, like as a slave, you weren't allowed to speak up. You know, you weren't allowed to do anything. If you're sick, you still go to work. You know, if you're pregnant, there is no maternity leave. You work until you can't work, and then after you had a baby, you get back to work. And not being able to talk about the stuff that was going on because you in a situation where you have to just work because of circumstances that you're in. So yeah, I think it's historical. The reason we are like the way we are, but I think going back to what you're saying about y'all asking what you can do for your community, I think the biggest thing is just showing people, like, man, we all go through stuff, and it's okay to talk about it with somebody. And even when the other person may not have all the answers, sometimes it's good just to be able to talk to somebody and say, this is what I'm going through, and somebody else to be able to say, you know what, I'm going through it too. Let's get through this together, or I'm not going through this, but I'm here for you. So let's just support each other. So.
I think a big problem is that with black parents, they're kind of stuck in the past. Do you have a way to think about how we can overcome that? Because with them, it's like, well, we were raised like this. Our parents taught us this way, and since we turned out as what we perceive as good, there's not really a way to do it better, or there's not a change along with the times. You know, it's like they're stuck.
Well, I think what you do have to realize is there was a long time where black people weren't allowed to do certain things that white people could do. So when they were able to get those rights and were able to do those things, they felt like, okay, so white people have been prospering, so now we can do it so we can prosper. So an example of that is the ability to go to college and get a college degree. So like you say, black parents stuck in the past. So on one hand, I agree with you. On one hand, I disagree. So one, I am an advocate of college. So I don't want to say I'm against college, because there's some people you don't need college. You can find out anything you want on YouTube, which in some sense is true, but even though there's a lot of bad information on YouTube, there's a lot of good information about it too. If my washing machine breaks down right now, I'm not calling somebody to fix it. I'm getting on YouTube to see if I can fix it first to save myself money. But also, that college is good for some people. And I think a lot of what you are saying, black parents being stuck in the past, I think it's them believing you have so many generations that either couldn't go to college because they weren't allowed to go to school, or they didn't have the financial resources to go to college. So a lot of time, especially for a black parent, they're like, if I can get my child to college, then they'll be rich, or they'll be perfectly fine financially for the rest of their life. And if you look at research and statistics, you are more likely to make more money if you do go to college. But it's not true for everybody. So there are students that can do stuff like get on Twitch and make $1 million. It's not likely that you're going to do it. That's kind of like going to the NBA. But there are opportunities where you can become an entrepreneur without going to college. The likelihood is a lot lower than what we probably would believe if we just got on TikTok and on Instagram, because everybody's living a great life if you look at them on social media. But I think just that past mindset is, let's push our children to do stuff like the military or college, because we know if they do that, then we believe that they'll have just the world. They can do anything they want to do. And yeah, there is some parts of that aren't true. And then a lot of time we'll even put ourselves into debt to go to do what we something that we shouldn't do, like picking a certain college that really can't afford to go to, but it has this good name. Somebody that I work with in JCPS that helps students get into colleges, he doesn't believe anybody should pay $25,000 a year for college. He's like and even me talking to students, they'll say, I want to go to Morehouse, I want to go to Spelman. They'll have their mind made if they want to go to this particular school, and they don't care what it costs. They'll take out loans and all that kind of stuff. Now, realizing when you graduate, you may have $100,000 or $200,000 in debt. It'll feel good while you're going to school, but then you still got to pay back that debt. You know what I'm saying? So I think there's an in-between. Like, yeah, college is good to go to, but we also don't need to worry about going to such and such school because it can put us in debt and put us behind instead of putting us ahead that I think a lot of parents and even sometimes students believe.
Yeah, I agree with that actually. But on that sense, I would actually like to ask, because a big part of BSU is not just living in the past or the present per se, but also looking part of the future. So an interesting question I would like to ask you is, when you think about the future and you work in a diversity, to help BSU unions all across the state, when you're looking into that, what do you envision? What do you think for us? Like, what do you see when you look into the future?
Well, BSUs are not, as far as like having them at every middle and high school, it's not very old. The first year was pandemic year. Last year was our first, I'll say, full year. But even with last year, we still had breaks where we had to stop going to school. We also had times where we had to meet virtually instead of in person, like, and all that kind of stuff. So to me, this is the first real year of BSU. So I think that one is so young, but every year I think what JCPS should do is to provide more and more opportunities for students in BSUs, and hopefully BSUs to grow bigger and bigger, and for BSUs, for the student groups to do what they can to make their small communities better. So Waggener just focuses on making where they live better and their school community better, and Valley High School does the same for their school community and where they live better, and Crosby Middle School does the same thing. If we all do that as a district, then we'll make our whole city better. We'll provide more opportunities for black students in the BSUs as far as helping getting more in colleges, helping more get funding for colleges, making sure that more parents know how to fill out a FAFSA and all that kind of stuff. Just like y'all battling food deserts, another school, BSU, may decide to battle homelessness. And if all these groups are growing larger and larger and setting out bigger and bigger goals to try to make the school and the city better, then I think it'll make the school and all schools in our city as a whole better. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Vann, for having this podcast and for supporting BSU once more.
No problem. Thank you to the Board of Education and everybody who's fought to make this possible. So thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you.
This has been the Justice for You podcast. We want to thank all the interviewers, all the interviewees, and all the people who support the work of the podcast.